I'm going live. All righty. All right. The date, October 3rd, 1926. The time. Well, it wasn't Monday Night Football, I can tell you that much. Due probably to the lack of lights, it was probably 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The Giants, when they played their games at the Polo Grounds, this was not played at the Polo Grounds, but when the Giants played the games at the Polo Grounds, time was around 2:30 in the afternoon. But this is played in Providence, Rhode Island. The place, the Cyclodrome. Oh, yeah. And the teams, the New York Giants at the Providence Steamroller. Now, the first game the Giants ever played, regular season games, was, it was in 1925. They played 2 games before the regular season started in 1925. They played kind of like an exhibition / glorified scrimmage against the Newark Red Jackets. That was their first quote unquote, whatever, official, unofficial game, whatever, but it was an exhibition game. Then the following week, the Giants played the Old New Britain team. So those are the 2 there was no preseason back then. It was exhibition games for the Giants in 1925. After they played the Old New Britain team from Connecticut, after they came back, they took a boat or a ferry on over to Providence, Rhode Island. So their first regular season game ever was against the Providence Steamroller at the Cyclodrome in 1925. They lost 14-0. They were the Giants. Giants 1925 started off 0-3. They would go on to win their 8 of their final 9 games and finish off 8-4. It was a little different here. The Giants started off on the road in 1925. Once again, the same thing kind of here in 1926. I believe a lot of it was because they were sharing the Polo Grounds with the New York baseball team. So I'm just a hunch. It kind of makes sense that they start their seasons on the road, so they're not in the Polo Grounds chewing up the field for the baseball team. So the Giants always started their first. Let's see what 19. Let's go here. Let's go back here. Oh yeah, I mean, wow, yeah. Oh yeah. The Giants. Let's see. They played which I did a video of the Trenton Athletic Association, the Trenton AA. Or the Trenton Athletic Club. That was on the road. That was on September 19th of 1926. Their first game, which I did a video on, was at the Hartford, at the Hartford Blues on September 26th. Then they played at the Providence Steamroller on October 3rd. Then they played, after this week, they played in Chicago against the Bears on October 10th. They possibly, when the schedule originally came out, they had a game scheduled against the Canton Bulldogs in Canton, Ohio on October 12th. So basically 2 days after they're supposed to play the Bears on October 10th of 1926, they technically scheduled a game in Canton, Ohio against the Canton Bulldogs. Well, that one never got played. It looks like it possibly got postponed. I did not see anything about it in any articles in the newspapers at all. Then they played another game on October 16th against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. The Giants didn't play their first home game at the Polo Grounds. It was the following day, October 17th, against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. What happens in Frankfurt? They played in Philadelphia. They didn't play sports on Sundays. So the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, any home games they played were on Saturday. And as same with what happened last year, in 1925, the Giants played back-to-back games against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. And they lost both of those games against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets in 1925. The Giants played October 17th and October 18th. In 1925 against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. And in 1926, the Giants played October 16th and October 17th against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. A home and home series. So basically on Saturday, they would play in Philadelphia, when the football's allowed to be played on Saturday in Philadelphia. Sunday was not. It was a Sabbath day. But so the Giants played, their first home game was on October 17th. So basically, I'm assuming it seemed like when they start playing their home games, it's probably kind of like after any possible World Series would be over. Because usually the baseball season ended toward the end of September. Well, if they played the World Series went into October, obviously. So it seems like the Giants would schedule, because you just don't come up to the beginning of the season and just start, they scheduled their season in the summertime. They would figure it out with all the other clubs and all. They would have a meeting and they would like come up with their schedule. And the teams all play different amount of games. Let me hold on here. The Providence Steamroller. Let's see, how many games did they play? They played the same amount of games as the Giants did. They played 13 games in 1926. They won a 5-7-1. The Giants were 8-4-1. But if we look the 1926 season there in the NFL, teams played all different amount of games. I know the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, they played a ton of games. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets played 17 games in 1926. The Bears played 16. Pottsville Maroons played 14. The Kansas City Cowboys had a good team. They played 11. The Giants played 13. Providence Steamroller played 13. Green Bay Packers played 13. But then you go down to the bottom list, the teams that really were not very good, were very successful. The Louisville Colonels, played 4 games. The Hammond Pros played 4 games. The Racine Tornadoes played 5 games. The Columbus Tigers played 7 games. The Akron Indians played 8 games. The Dayton Triangles played 6 games. So they're all different amount of games got played, just because, you were, it's not the way it is nowadays where everybody's playing, nowadays 17 games, or the same thing like the preseason, right? There's no, everybody plays 4, unless, something, maybe they're playing a Hall of Fame game or so, you might be playing 5 preseason games, but for the most part, 3. I still got the 16 game schedule in my head, but nowadays it's 3 preseason games. 17 regular, 3 preseason games. Go back a couple years ago, it was 16 regular games, 4 preseason. So it's not the way. Everybody was different. You had to come up with your own schedule. So everybody was playing different amount of games, and of course, making money. It's not the way it is today. There's no TV revenue. There's no ESPN back then, and all of that. So making money back then was huge. I mean, it's not like nowadays where every team is guaranteed so much money. It's not like that back then. So many teams, it kept every year coming and going because they just couldn't afford to stay around because they just did not make enough money. Because back then in the mid-20s, boxing was huge. Horse racing was big. Baseball was huge. College football was huge. So many sports were so much bigger than the NFL was. NFL was in its infancy, trying to just make it. And of course, we know it did. But so many teams did not succeed because of financial struggle. So let's talk about the Providence Steamroller here, okay? Because they had 1928 was their season. They won it all, baby. 1928. So for the Giants, 1925, the Chicago Cardinals won. 1926, this was the year of the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. 27 was the year of the New York Football Giants with the greatest defense of all time, bar none. Chicago Bears, 85, get the heck out of here. The 2000 Ravens, get the out of here. The 1927 New York Giants football team defense, 13 games, 20 points, 1.5 points per game. Oh, yeah, word to your mother. Ain't nobody any better. Mark it down, baby. But 1928, the Providence Steamroller, that was their season. They won it all in 1928. There was no championship games or nothing. It was the team with the best overall winning percentage. And 1926 was the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. God bless them, man. Let me tell you what, they played 17 games and they had the best winning percentage. They were 14-1-2. Holy crap. They played 17 games, lost one. 14-1-2. Their winning percentage, just had it here. Winning percentage, .933. They just beat the Bears. The Bears were 12-1-3. The Bears had 3 ties. The Yellow Jackets had 2. So the Bears played, what was that, 16 games. The Yellow Jackets played 17. So the Bears, would have had to play a couple more games, and they might have been tied with the Yellow Jackets. But it was 2 teams had 1 loss. The Chicago Bears in 1926 had 1 loss. They were 12-1-3, and they did not win the whole thing. So the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, 17 games, they had 1 loss. Very, very impressive, right? So Providence Steamroller, who are they? Let's check it out. And I love the way they got their name. We're going to go, that's toward the bottom of this article here. It says the Providence Steamrollers, also referred to as the Providence Steamroller, the Providence Steamrollers. Yeah, so somebody, it's called I see Steamrollers. I see the Steamroller. So they were American football team based in Providence, Rhode Island, in the National Football League from 1925 to 1931. Providence was the first New England team to win an NFL championship. The Steamroller won the league's championship in 1928, which is the latest NFL championship win by a defunct team to date. Every team after that, every team after 1928 is still in existence. 1929 was the first three-peat. The Packers, 29, 30, and 31. I can go on and on and on. 32 and 33 was the Bears. 34 was the Giants. 35 was the Lions. 36 was the Packers. 37 was the Redskins. 38 was the Giants. 39 was the Packers. 40, 41 was the Bears. 42 was the Redskins. 43 was the Bears. So I can go on and on. 44 was the Packers. 45 was the Rams. 46 was I think 46 was the Bears. They beat the Giants. So every team after 1928 is still in existence. So the Providence Steamroller in 1928 is the oldest team, or I guess it was the latest NFL championship to win by a defunct team. So because they're not around anymore. Most of their home games were played at the Cyclodrome, which this game was played, a 10,000-seat stadium that was built as a velodrome for bicycle races. It was built in, I think it was built in 1925. We'll go over that in just a minute here. The Steamrollers were established in 1916 by members of the Providence Journal sports editor Charles Coppin and part-time sports writer Pierce Johnson. 3 men shared in the ownership and management of the team: Coppin, James Dooley, and Peter Laudati. Meanwhile, Johnson stayed on as the team's manager for each year of its existence. So Johnson was Pierce Johnson, part-time sports writer, stayed on as the team's manager. The team soon became a regional power, and by the mid-1920s was known as the best independent team in the country. By 1919, the team was drawing in more spectators than Brown University by a margin of 2-1, according to newspaper reports at the time. However, it seemed unlikely since the Steamrollers crowd was on average 3,000 spectators a game. The players' wages were lower than those of Indiana and Ohio, so it was harder for the Steamrollers to bring in ringers, meaning pay good known football players, bring them in, pay them to play for their team. They couldn't afford. Not like today. Today, there's hundreds of millions of dollars available to pay players nowadays. Several college players did play for the Steamrollers, but under aliases, so as to not to jeopardize their amateur status. Because if they were a college player and they were known to have played, their amateur, they probably would have been ineligible for college. So, 1924 Providence schedule featured several NFL teams. The Steamrollers posted a 3-2-1 record against those NFL teams, defeating the Rochester Jeffersons, the Minneapolis Marines, and the Dayton Triangles. Both of their losses came against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. The team also posted a scoreless tie against the Columbus Tigers. The 1924 Steamrollers then went on to win the mythical undisputed championship of the Northeast. The team's success that season was enough to make Steamrollers management and fans start thinking about playing in the NFL. Their one problem was that their stadium, right, the Cyclodrome, was only, I think, held like about 8,000 people. We're going to go a little article on that. But it just, I mean, see, with the Giants, the Polo Grounds, they could hold like 60, 70. I mean, it was very difficult for them to get that many in there. Don't get me wrong. But if need be, if the game was that big, the Giants had over 70,000 people, around 70,000 people for a game in 1925. You know how much money that brought in? Oh, it saved the Giants season. But when you have a small stadium, like the Decatur Staleys, their field, I think, only held like about 1,000 people in 1920. They had to move it. Their owner was thinking outside. We need to bring people in. We need a stadium that can hold more people. So they moved it to Chicago in 1921, when they became the Chicago Staleys in 1921. 1922, they became, of course, the Chicago Bears. But, some of these teams with small stadiums, maybe they could fill it up, but that's great. If you only bring in 1,000 people, you're pretty much screwed. You need people in there, paying people too. All right. Let's see here. Providence joined the NFL for time in the 1925 season. By that time, only 3 players from the 1924 team were still on the lineup when the team's first practice in 1925 was held on September 17th. In fact, only about a dozen of them wore Steamrollers colors for the team's debut in the NFL. The Steamrollers had played mediocre football in their first 2 NFL seasons. This season here was not a banner season for them now, but posted a strong 8-5-1 record in 1927. That was the year the Giants were 11-1-1, and they won their championship. But with Jim Kinselman as the team's head coach for his per-game salary of $292. Kinselman not only coached the team, but was also played quarterback in a single wing formation. The star player for Providence was halfback George Wildcat Wilson, a 1925 All-American from the University of Washington, who had spent the 1926 season as the head of the traveling Los Angeles Wildcats of the American Football League. All right. And I said in 1928 they won their championship. 1928. Let's see here. Yeah, the Yellow Jackets in 1928. They won 3 more games than the Steamrollers. They posted a 11-3-2 record, but Providence was awarded the title due to having a better winning percentage. So in 1928, all right. Once again, Frankfurt played a lot of games, the Yellow Jackets, because a lot of times what they wound up doing was they played home and home. They played Saturday and they played Sunday. It's easy to pile up a lot of games when you're playing Saturday and Sunday. But in 1928, the Providence Steamrollers were 8-1-2. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets won 3 more games. They won 11 compared to the 8 for the Providence Steamroller, but the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets were 11-3-2. In 1928, the Providence Steamroller had a winning percentage of .889. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, with 3 more wins, had a winning percentage of .786, therefore giving the Providence Steamroller the championship in 1928. There was no championship games out there. It was basically whoever had the best winning percentage. In 1928, the Providence Steamroller had the best winning percentage, and therefore they won the championship. This is kind of interesting. So we got some NFL firsts here, and we'll just go over their decline. NFL first. Over the course of the next 7 years, the team not only won an NFL championship, but also established 3 league firsts. In 1925, Providence was the first NFL team to play its home games in a bicycle racing stadium, or a velodrome, which is a bicycle racing stadium. And here, their stadium was called the Cyclodrome. In 1929, the Steamrollers established 2 NFL firsts. In the 6-day period between November 5th and November 10th, 1929, Providence played 4 games. And you got guys nowadays, and they played 60 minutes too, meaning guys played 60 minutes, meaning guys didn't come off the field. If you came off the field, you were dead. They were dragging you off the field, throwing your carcass into a ambulance and just taking you to the hospital, and you didn't come off the field. They had substitutions, but a lot of the guys played 60 minutes. 4 games in 5-6 days? Yeah. The marathon string began against the Staten Island Stapletons, the Chicago Cardinals, and concluded with a 2-game series against the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, basically probably home and away. Home and home, Saturday and Sunday games. Although the Steamrollers made history, their 0-3-1 record during that 6-day stretch proved to be a scheduling disaster. During the second game of that 4-game series, Providence hosted the Cardinals on November 6th. The game was played at night at nearby Kinsley Park, where floodlights recently had been installed. The teams had originally been scheduled to play on Sunday, November 3rd, but the heavy rains made the Cyclodrome field unplayable. Remember, back then it was a field. It was just dirt and grass. There was no, the way it is nowadays, like how you can have a tsunami come rolling over a field, and basically it just drains within 3 minutes. So they have a deluge, and you don't see any puddles in any NFL fields nowadays or nothing like that. Heaven forbid we have any mud or anything on the field. Don't want that. Well, back in the day, it was just dirt. And if it rained, guess what? You had dirt with puddles of mud, and they played in it. Unless it was just, I guess, too bad, But heavy rains made the Cyclodrome field unplayable since neither team wanted to lose a payday, and that's what it was. I mean, they came to make some money. They came to play some football, the game they loved and enjoyed to play. And basically, some of them put their lives on the line. But it was a payday. It was huge. The historic night game was hastily scheduled. Because of this, Providence made history again by being the first team to host an NFL game at night under floodlights. Although the Steamroller lost 16-0, the game was declared a success because 6,000 fans attended. Cool. And now the decline of the Providence Steamroller. Let's see. They were founded in 1916. That's when they played a lot of their. They were an independent team from 1916 to 1924. They were in the National Football League from 1925 to 1933. So their decline. Despite their 1928 championship, the team experienced troubles in 1920. And of course, the Great Depression started rolling around in the late 20s, early 30s. And that, a lot of teams, some teams succumbed to that. If there was no money, if nobody could afford to come see your games, right, because they had to come. They had to pay to see you play football. If nobody came, there was no money. There's no money. You can't go on. It is what it is, right? So on January 4th, 1929, Sonnenberg defeated Strangler Lewis in 2 straight falls to capture the World Heavyweight Championship in pro wrestling. Aha. This caused Sonnenberg to stay out of football, as he could make better money defending his title. Meanwhile, Odin quit pro football to take a job with an insurance company in Boston, and Smith decided to return to his native Missouri and coach football. Kinselman also didn't fully recover from a knee injury sustained in 1928. Reinquist missed the first half of the season due to illness, and Wildcat Wilson became complacent and turned into an ordinary back. The 1929 Steamroller team struggled to a 4-6-2 record, resulting in a 7th-place finish. This caused the fans who attended each game during the championship season to stay home. And that's the kiss of death. Your fans stay home. That's the kiss of death. The team posted a 6-4-1 record in 1930 and a 4-4-3 record in 1931. The lack of interest, coupled with the Great Depression in 1930, caused Dooley, Coppin, and Lodaddy to suspend operations after the 1931 season. The three owners then gave up and turned the franchise back over to the NFL in 1933. It was just, it's just the Depression killed them, absolutely killed them. Now, this just one more thing here. We got the origin of the team. Now, so during the halftime against a game between, it says the Steamrollers, but they couldn't have been called the Steamrollers at the time, so I'm not exactly sure. Does it say what they're? League, history, colors, head coaches, managers. I don't exactly know. I mean, I mean, they couldn't have been called the Steamrollers because they didn't have their name yet. So I don't know, but the origin during the game between the Steamrollers and the Providence Pros, Charles Coppin, who was getting a hot dog, heard a remark that an opposing team was getting steamrolled. Coppin loved the remark so much he named his team the Steamrollers. So that's how they got their name. Somewhere along the line is Coppin. Let's see here. Management team of Coppin, Charles Coppin, sports editor Charles Coppin was getting a hot dog, and he heard and said, "Yeah, the one team is getting steamrolled." And it's like, yeah, that's a pretty cool name for a team. So that's how they got their name, the Providence Steamroller or the Providence. I see Steamroller and I see Steamrollers. Take your pick. All right, it is what it is. All right, so now we got the Cyclodrome. All right, that's where the game is being played at. All right, so the Cyclodrome is an American football stadium and a velodrome located in Providence, Rhode Island. Its name derived from an intended use as a bicycle racing stadium or a velodrome, where it was built in 1925 by sports promoter Pete Lodaddy. Remember, Lodaddy was also associated with the Providence Steamroller. The stadium was home to the Providence Steamroller of the National Football League from 1925 to 1933, who played their games in the infield of the velodrome. The football field was snugly surrounded by a wooden track with steeply banked ends. So, basically, bike race, right? In the straightaways, it was flat, but when on the turns, it banked up. And you see pictures, right, of the embankments. It's like a NASCAR, and the same thing with NASCAR. The straightaways are flat, but in the turns, it goes up on an embankment, right? Let's see here. The football field was snugly surrounded by a wooden track with steeply banked ends, which cut sharply into the end zones and reduced them to just 5 yards in depth. Not the whole end zone, but the corners of it. If you ever look at pictures of the Cyclodrome and you zoom in, whatever, and you see the embankment, the embankments go up. The corners of the end zones, they're cut off. The back parts are cut off, so it's only about 5 yards in depth. You go over whatever 7, 8, maybe 10 yards or so. They're 10 yards in depth, but the back corners of the end zone, there's no fade to the back corner. Ain't none of that. I mean, you do that, you're in the stands. Back then, right? There's no back shoulder fade to the corner. Ain't none of that. I'll tell you what, dude, go to the 17th row and I'll hit you with a back shoulder fade, right? But I mean, if you ever look at the Cyclodrome pictures and you kind of get close and all, you can see the corners of the end zone. They're only about 5 yards in depth because the track, the bank, cuts off about five yards of the corner of the end zone. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's the way things were back then, right? Let's see. Despite football games, temporary seating was permitted on the straightaway portion of the track, which was so close to the field that players, after being tackled, often found themselves in the stands. But it was so important to allow more people to come in, because the more people, paying customers, you'd come in, the more money they made. And that was huge, right? In 1930, floodlights were installed at the stadium for night games, and the Steamroller became the first NFL team to host a game under the lights, right? The Cyclodrome had a capacity of 10,000 spectators, which, I mean, if they had 10,000 all the time, I think it probably just barely survive. But as we noted, after the 28th season, 1929, they started becoming complacent, and some guys left and all that and everything, and they probably didn't bring in 10,000 paying spectators. Some of the paying customers just stayed home, and if you only had a couple thousand people at the game, and they're paying like 50 cents for maybe $1 at the most for a ticket, and you're bringing in a couple $1,000. Well, a lot of times the way it was, sometimes like in 1925, reading articles, like the Chicago Bears, if they came to your place, they were guaranteed a certain amount. You had to pay them like $2,500 for them to show up, right? So if you're bringing in $2,000 and the Bears are coming to town, you bring in two, you owe them $2,500, you're screwed. I mean, where's the other $500 coming from that you got to pay the Bears? Because they got to pay their players. Not only that, but then you got to pay your players. So I mean, and if you ain't making no money, you're going under. The Cyclodrome was located off North Main Street near the Providence Pawtucket line. In its later years, the Cyclodrome was the location of the EM Lowers Drive-In Theater. Interesting. The site is now home of the Ocean State Job Lot and a Peter Pan bus terminal. It was demolished in 1938. It was built in 1925, which was the first year that the Providence Steamroller entered the NFL. It was closed that Cyclodrome was closed in 1937 and was demolished in 1938. So the Providence Steamroller, this was their second game of the season. They played most of their games at home too. They played 4 games on the road. Out of their 13 games, they played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, the Giants. They would play the Giants again, the Pottsville Maroons, and the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets again. They played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets 3 times during the season. 2 times they played in Frankfurt. But so they played, out of their 13 games, 9 of them were at home, 4 of them were on the road. So the Providence Steamroller, they played their first game of the season on September 26th, Sunday, September 26th, at home against the Brooklyn Lions. They would win 13-0. So this was the second game of the season for the Providence Steamroller. It was obviously Sunday, October 3rd. It was the same thing for the New York Football Giants, right? This was this Giants' second game. It was the same thing. They played September 26th, the Sunday before, on the road. Giants played their first 4 games, regular season games, on the road. They played against the Hartford Blues, the Providence Steamroller, the Chicago Bears, and the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Their first 4 games were on the road for the start to the 1926 season. But so the Giants beat the Hartford Blues 21-0. So this would be the Giants' second game of the season on the road against the Providence Steamroller. As I said, the Giants would finish this season 8-4-1. So this was a very good season for the Giants. It was what did I say it was for the Providence? 5-7-1. So it was not actually their 1925. The Providence Steamroller was 6-5-1. So just mediocre times. But 1928 was in 1927 was the Giants season, and the 1928 was the Providence Steamroller season. So that gives you a little bit of a background here on the games, right? Hey, DQ, what's going on there, brother? DQ's in the house. All right, I got right here. This goes over some of the history of the Giants a lot. It goes up to like 1962. It goes from 1925 to 62. So it's a good book. It's got. It has basically every season in here. Some games it has more details than other games, but this has a little bit here, just a little bit of. Then I got some articles I'm going to read, go over here. But let's see here. Let's see. So after the Giants beat Hartford, they traveled to Providence 7 days later. The Giants again dominated play and again won the game in the line. So the Giants, newsflash, they won this game. Unlike when they started 1925 season against Providence, right, on the road, they lost 14-0. So the Steamrollers managed to rush for only 3 first downs to 13 from the visitors. The Giants 13 first downs back in the day. I mean, 13 first downs nowadays is not too good unless you're completing like 80-yard passes for touchdowns. But if you're only 13 first downs nowadays, ain't too good. 13 first downs back then, pretty good. Let's see here. But the Giants still needed a brilliant defensive play to win. Now, the Giants had 2 games. Well, the other one later on in the season. The Giants had 2 games which they wound up winning because they blocked an extra point this season. So, otherwise, they wouldn't have lost the game. They would have been a tie. It was this game here, and it was another game they won 14-13. They blocked the extra point with like 30 seconds to go. The other team scored. Duluth Eskimos scored a touchdown under like 30 seconds or so to go. Ernie Nevers went to kick the extra point. I think Tilly Voss. Oh, yeah. Word to your mother. Tilly Voss. Write it down. Blocked the extra point. And the Giants wound up winning 14-13. It was the same thing here. Giants still needed a brilliant defensive play to win. After scoring on a 15-yard diagonal pass from Haynes to Bomar in the second quarter, the Giants gave up a touchdown late in the game and led 7-6. With Bomar opening up a hole, McBride hurled one blocker, dove headfirst into the kicker, and deflected the extra point attempt. Right? Gave up a touchdown late in the game. We'll go over the scoring here, but the Giants gave up a touchdown late in the game and led 7-6. Right? With Bomar opening up a hole for the Giants, McBride, a phenomenal player for the Giants, hurled one blocker, dove headfirst into the kicker, and deflected the extra point attempt. Jack's a funny guy, said one teammate. He'd be the last guy in the world you'd expect to take a chance at getting his face mussed up. But he's one hell of a football player when he wants to be. So as I said, this was there was 2 games the Giants wound up winning because they blocked the extra point like late in the game. So they wound up prevailing by 1 point. If not, they wouldn't have lost the game, but they would have, instead of being 8-4-1, they wouldn't have lost. They would have been 6-4-3 because they would have had 2 additional ties. So, all right. So I got some articles here. I gotta find them. All right, here. This one here. Okay, this one here is from I believe it's from the New York Times. Here we go. Football Giants shade Providence. Oh yeah, triumph 7-6, baby, barn burner. When McBride breaks through and blocks, Kiefer's try for point. Bomar scores a touchdown for the Giants. They takes a 15-yard pass from Hinkie Haynes. My man, Hinkie Haynes scored the first 2 touchdowns in Giants history against the Cleveland Bulldogs. It was the 4th game of the 1925 season. So Hinkie Haynes, H&H, write it down, scored the first 2 touchdowns for Giants. One was on a pass reception, and the other one was on a run. Bomar scores a touchdown. It takes a 15-yard pass from Hinkie Haynes after a long march. New York makes 13 first downs to 3 for Providence. All right, Providence, Rhode Island on October 3rd. Jack McBride, fullback for the New York Football Giants, broke through the Providence line to block. I do apologize. Jack Kiefer's drop kick for a point after touchdown and gave the Giants a 7-6 victory in the National Professional Football League game here this afternoon, which thrilled 7,500 fans. The Giants showed their superiority early in the game, holding the Steamrollers to 1 first down in the opening period, only 1 in the second, none in the third, and 1 in the final quarter. So, Giants made 13 first downs by running and nicely executed forward pass attack. The Giants got their touchdown in the second period as a result of a 60-yard march, which netted 5 first downs in a row, with Haynes, Haggerty, and McBride carrying, and with well-timed forwards. Well, this is the way they word this stuff, with well-timed, meaning passes, forwards interspersed. Not by completing passes, by well-timed forwards interspersed. Haynes passes to Bomar. The touchdown was scored when Hinkie Haynes shot a beautiful pass to Lynn Bomar, who was standing over the Providence goal line. McBride added the point on a placement. Curly Oden saved the Steamrollers from a shutout when he took Hogan's kick on his own 30-yard line and sprinted 70 yards before being forced outside. The touchdown was also made on a pass, Kiefer shooting the ball 20 yards to Golembeski, but the passer's try for point was deflected. And it's Tomlin here, not Mike Tomlin from the Pittsburgh Steelers, but from the New York Giants. Tomlin, New York lineman, was injured and was carried from the field with a badly wrenched neck and shoulder. Wesley, Providence guard, was also taken out of the game with a bad cut over his eye. Now, we've got the starting of the lineups here. Murtaugh was the left end for the Giants. John Alexander was the left tackle for the Giants. Tomlin was the Giants' left guard. Joe Doc Alexander was just also happened to be the Giants' coach for the 1926 season, was the center. Carney was the right guard for the Giants. Steve Owens was the right tackle for the Giants. This is the first year he started playing for the Giants, and he would play for the Giants, and then he would start becoming their coach in 19. He was the coach for the Giants. He was the interim coach. Him and Benny Friedman coached the final two games of the 1930 season. But in 1931, Steve Owens became the full-time coach for the New York Football Giants from 1931 to 1953. Then Bomar was the right end of the Giants. Hinkie Haynes was the quarterback. Haggerty was the Giants' left halfback. Grigg was the right halfback, and McBride was the fullback for the Giants. Providence Steamrollers. Garvey was their left end. Spellman was their left tackle. Braney was their left guard. Erkstein was their center. Wesley was their right guard. Gullian, Gullian, Gullan or Gulian was their right tackle. So it's either Gullian or Gullian. Golembeski was their right end. Oden was their quarterback. Wentworth was their left halfback. Kiefer was their right halfback, and Laird was their fullback. And I said the Giants scored in the second quarter, and the Providence Steamrollers scored. It looks like it was in the third quarter. They scored. They got their touchdown in the third quarter. That was from the New York Times. All right, then I got two other articles here I can read. This one's a short one here. Let's see. New York Giants get the odd point to win. Playing brilliantly against the crack steamroller 11 of this city this afternoon, the New York Giants knows that a 7-6 victory in a National League contest. Now, this just goes to show you how different it's different, right? This paper here says they played in front of 8,000 fans at the Cyclodrome. The other New York Times said 7,500 people. The home team was saved from a shutout by Oden's brilliant 70-yard run back of a punt in the third period, which placed the ball on the Giants' 10-yard line and left the way open for Jack Kiefer to make a forward pass over the goal line to Golembeski for a touchdown. So the only way Providence, and they didn't even get a first down on this drive. They scored a touchdown. Remember, in the third quarter, they didn't get a first down, but they scored a touchdown. They ran a punt back, 70 yards. So I guess they got it, but I guess he caught the ball at the 20, ran it back 70 yards. I guess got tackled and knocked out of bounds at the 10-yard line, right? And then Jack Kiefer completed a forward pass to Golembeski for a touchdown, and then it said the extra point was blocked. So the Giants wind up saving this game by blocking the extra point, 7-6. And basically, if they didn't block the extra point, it just would have been a tie. All right, so then we got this one. This is a nice long one here. There's a long one here. This one here. Doink. All right, let's zoom in here, baby. Already. Okay. Steamrollers lose 7-6 to Giants by 7-6. Steamrollers lose to Giants by 7-6 in a thrilling tilt. McBride and Bomar passed the touchdown. Oden makes 70-yard run. What was it, a 70-yard run? This is the Hartford Current. It was a 70-yard punt return. Jack McBride, fullback for the New York Giants, broke through the Providence Steamroller line to deflect Jackson Jackson Kiefer's drop kick for a try for point after touchdown and give the Giants a 7-6 victory in the National Professional Football League game here today, which had the 7,500 fans on their feet for the greater part of the contest. They were on their feet for a 7-6 game. The Giants showed their superiority early in the game, holding the roller to one first down in the first period. The roller was able to make only one first down in the second period and none in the third period. But oddly enough, in the third period, that's when they scored the touchdown. But they picked up one more in the final quarter. The Giants made 13 first downs during the game. And if you read some of these articles and all, 13 first downs back then was quite a bit. It was quite a bit. Let's see, the Giants made 13 first downs during the game through beautiful running by the back and a nicely executed forward pass attack. The Giants gained their touchdown in the second period as the result of a 60-yard march, which netted 5 first downs in a row, with Haynes, Haggerty, and McBride carrying and well-timed forwards. The touchdown was scored when Haynes shot a beautiful pass to Lynn Bomar, who was standing over the roller goal line. Kiefer, the only roller man within striking distance of Bomar, was taken out by 2 men. McBride added the point on a placement. Curly Oden saved the roller from a shutout when he took Hogan's kick on his own 20-yard line, and after shaking off a couple of potential tacklers, sprinted down the sidelines for 70 yards before being forced outside. It was a thrilling run as he eluded tackler after tackler and would have resulted in an immediate score if he had followed the interference which was forming to his right. But I guess if he would have just followed his blockers, he would have scored a touchdown. But I guess he went to his left and it wound up, I guess, being knocked out of bounds. But it wasn't like they had to settle for a field goal or whatever. They still at least scored a touchdown anyway. This touchdown also was made on a pass. Kiefer shooting the ball 20 yards to Golembeski. His try for point was deflected. Now, when it was at the 10-yard line, but let's not also forget his pass went 20 yards. Now, I'm not sure if they're also talking about, because back then there was a rule where you had to pass from at least 5 yards from behind the line of scrimmage. You couldn't. There was none of this nowadays where if you had a toenail still on the line of scrimmage, you could have almost your whole body over, throwing the ball. It wasn't like that back. You had to be way behind the line of scrimmage. I believe it was 5 yards, or there was a penalty. So, I mean, that's where sometimes the ball can get thrown 20 yards for a 10-yard completion, right? The roller was outplayed in virtually every department of the game. Its light backs, Kiefer, Oden, and Wentworth, were never able to lose for runs from scrimmage, while almost every one of the forwards, with the exception of the scoring play, was either knocked down, intercepted, or failed to net any substantial gain. All of the New York backs played driving football, smashing through the line for good gains and sliding off the tackles for yardage when first downs were needed. The Giants' defense was almost impregnable. Tomlin, once again, New York lineman, was injured during the contest and was carried from the field with a badly wrenched neck and shoulder. Wesley, the roller guard, also was taken out of the game with a bad cut over his one eye. It looks like their right guard was Julian. I'm going to say Gulian, not Gulian. Maybe it's Guli, maybe Julian or Gulian. So the Giants pretty much dominated this game, but hey, that's why you play the games. They were that's offense, defense, special teams, and the like. The Giants with 13 first downs, Providence with only 3, but a good long punt return almost netted the Providence steamroller a tie in this game. So the Giants would wind up winning this one, and 7-6. They beat the Hartford Blues the week before, 21-0. So now the Giants started their season off with a record of 2-0. Unfortunately, they would they would lose their next 3 games. So, and back then you lose three games or so. I mean, because the first, I believe it was, without looking, just trying to remember, because back then you had to have the best winning percentage. So you lose 3 or 4 games, you're out of it. Out of the first, I think 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23, out of the first 4 seasons, if you look, the team that won the championship, 3 out of the 4 were undefeated. Now, they weren't undefeated. They had ties in there, but they were undefeated. So, I mean, this season right here, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets had 1 loss. The Giants would wind up with 4. So the Giants started off 2-0. They would lose their next 3 games. So basically, if you look at the Yellow Jackets, wound up 14-1-2, right? They had 1 loss. The Giants lost 3 in a row. So basically, after these 3, they were pretty much out of it, And it is what it is. But this was 1926, but 1927 would be the Giants' year. So that's pretty much what happened, guys. That's what happened on this date, October 3rd, 1926, in New York football Giants history. I'll see you next time.